little, it went straight down the middle. Then it started to hook just a wee, wee bit. And that's when my caddy lost sight of it. That little white pellet has never been found to this day.
Hi, this is Kelly Elbin with Golf Life Navigators. Thanks for joining us for yet another episode of Voices of the Game, where we spend a few minutes with some of the outstanding golf media who've made our game so special down through the years. Nobody better than our very special guest today from NBC Sports and Golf Channel, Jimmy Roberts. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Kelly, pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Jimmy Roberts, a 13-time Emmy Award-winning broadcaster for his work on NBC and Golf Channel, also the voice of Masters.com. And Jimmy, a true man for all seasons, Notre Dame football, Wimbledon, the Olympics. Jimmy, is there anything, by the way, that you haven't done yet in your career as a broadcaster that you'd love to do?
That's a good question. You know what? I'm a lucky guy, that my office is, our golf courses and stadiums and locker rooms and fields. I'm just lucky. So, I haven't really thought much about that. I think I've checked most of the boxes I want to check in terms of the events I've covered, so I'm lucky.
I think you have checked them indeed. A lot to talk about in golf. We could go in a number of different directions, but Jimmy, the Ryder Cup has become an event that's unique in golf. When you look back to the start of the Ryder Cup in 1927, up in Massachusetts, and really
I wasn't there, Kelly. Just to be very clear about that, I was not at that one.
So I got to throw out this next question. Daggone, Jimmy. But all the way through 1977, the last year before continental Europe came aboard, it was a very one-sided affair with the U.S. just in complete control over the British Isles. It really almost was a non-event at some point, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's really funny. The first Ryder Cup I went to was actually in 1979 at the Greenbrier. Yeah. And I remember it was just kind of an intimate, clubby little event. It really didn't seem to get much attention.
Right.
And I think it was actually an add-on to the ABC Sports package that they had at the time. In order to get the PGA Championship, they had to take the Ryder Cup. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I do remember that there were a lot more people at the PGA Championship than there were at the Ryder Cup in 1979.
No, I don't think you were wrong about it at all. And 79 was important for many reasons, but the most being that was the first year that all of continental Europe came into the European team, which had just been, as I said, the British Isles before then. And the Ryder Cup from 1979 to today is the Ryder Cup that we really know. And Jimmy, if somebody asked you, tell me about the Ryder Cup as you know it now, if they'd never attended, how would you describe the Ryder Cup in 2018?
Oh, boy. Mayhem. I think those of us who love sports and those of us who cover sports, we all hope for and live for those great moments, of tremendous focus and, let's be truthful here, the anxiety that accompanies them. There is nothing at all like a putt at the Ryder Cup on Sunday that matters. And I can remember so many times being at a Ryder Cup, kind of crowded in around a 15th, 16th, 17th, or 18th green with a deciding putt about to happen. And the air was so thick. And, just the anticipation and the jubilation, the emotions, it's something you don't see. People are disappointed when they fail in golf, and we see disappointment. But you don't see anything like the souls that are crushed on the teams that don't win this thing. It's just amazing. And the jubilation of those who do. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's remarkable. And those emotions, those ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys of emotions, you first experienced that with NBC in 1995 at Oak Hill up in Rochester, and you saw what happened on Sunday with the U.S. team led by Lanny Watkins as the captain, leading going into that Sunday, and the tables certainly turned, didn't they?
Yeah, well, back then in 1995, I was still with ESPN, but I was covering the Ryder Cup, and I'm proud because back then I don't really think that this was the middle of football season, and I remember having to argue with the people I worked for to tell them that we needed to be there, that this was an event that if we were a sports network, we really needed to go and cover. Yeah. So I went to cover it for SportsCenter, and I remember it was really just a small skeleton crew. And I have a lot of memories from sports that I've covered through the years. But when I think back on memories that just stand out, kind of stand alone, there's one from Oak Hill that just really sticks in my mind as one of the greatest examples of what's right about sports. Now, you just spoke about Lanny Watkins and the American team and how they were overcome on that final day by Bernard Gallagher and the team from Europe. Well, Bernard Gallagher had been a two-time captain, I think, of the European team, and he had followed Tony Jacklin, who had had such tremendous success.
Sure had.
And Gallagher had lost once, maybe twice. I could be wrong about this. My memory's a little fuzzy.
Gallagher lost. Yeah, he lost at Kiowa in '91 by a point, and then he lost at the Belfry in '93 by 2.
Right. So he had come in having lost 2 straight. Yeah. And what happened on that final day was just shocking. The American team was deflated. And Lanny Watkins, who is not only such a great match play player, but played so well as a player in the Ryder Cup. I mean, he really took this to heart. And he was just crushed. And I remember being at the closing ceremony that day. And the closing ceremony at a Ryder Cup is, it's ceremonial for the most part. I mean, not much happens there that you're going to... You remember the golf shots. You don't remember the speeches.
Sure.
But Lanny got up first to address the crowd and to address his team and to address the victorious European team. And he got up there on the podium and he took his glasses out of his pocket and he unfolded his speech and he started to talk, and he was lost in his emotions and really couldn't speak. And then just as he was up there, and it was a really uncomfortable moment, and just as he was up there struggling, here comes Bernard Gallagher sprinting down the other end of the stage, putting his arm around Lanny, and he takes the paper from Lanny's hands, and he says, "Let me help you with that, my friend. I've been through this a few times myself." It was, even to this day, when I think about it, and I don't have a great memory for a lot of the things that I've covered, it just seems that, a lot kind of all blends into, a shot, a home run, a great serve, a touchdown. This was one of the things that I will always remember. It was one of the most human things that I think I've ever witnessed in sports. And I just thought it was so great. And the crowd broke up, and Lanny, smiled and was able to talk. And the two of them up there together did the speech. And it was just so wonderful.
Well, I think that Samuel Ryder, when he put together the Ryder Cup, had that kind of moment in mind where even in the lowest of points for Lanny, there was camaraderie, there was sportsmanship, there was a sense of great spirit about the game and what Bernard Gallagher did.
Yeah, and listen, you'd imagine so. I mean, it's gotten to be so hard-boiled these days. It really worries me. And I think that, this last time around up in Minneapolis, I just thought, the crowds were very, very excited and excitable. And I think some people went over the line. And listen, let's be fair about this. The complaints that came from the European team ring kind of hollow to me because I've seen exactly the same type of behavior, whether it's been at up in Scotland the last time that we were there, or in wherever we've been, in Wales. I mean, you've seen it on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's just, it worries me a little bit.
No, and I understand that, and I think that it has become such a mega event, and the Europeans certainly have treated it, for a long, long time. Even before it was a big deal over here. It was big among the British and so forth. But yeah, it's at a very different level now. And talk for a minute about Sunday in 1999 at the Country Club outside of Boston, and Justin Leonard, the long putt he makes, and that comeback, and maybe that was in some ways that started, and maybe even put the Ryder Cup on the map for people who weren't totally familiar with it.
Yeah, I think that was as dramatic as they get in Leonard's match, and I think that emotions probably got the better of a number of players, and I think it was a bitter pill to swallow for the European team to have been ahead by a margin which had never been overcome before.
That's right.
There were great moments of sportsmanship that week too. I mean, I remember, of course, Payne Stewart in his match with Colin Montgomery, not making that match go all the way.
That's right.
To its conclusion, in deference to, the man that he was playing against, because the matches had already been decided. And I think that, look, these guys get as competitive as you will ever see them get in this thing. And then, listen, I don't know if it's a cliche or it's not a cliche, but I think that what makes this so different is that in an individual sport, these guys are not competing as individuals, and the last thing in the world, it's one thing to let yourself down. It's a whole other thing to let your teammates and, maybe you think in your own conscience somewhere, the entire country down. So it's there's nothing like it, certainly not in golf.
Well, I certainly remember from my time with the PGA of America and the U.S. team when they came in after losing on that last day at Medina, and just the sheer devastation from the 12 players through the vice captains and all the way up to Davis Love III. And then 15, 20 minutes later, you have the jubilation of perhaps a few inebriated Europeans coming up to that interview dais, and the swings of emotion there were remarkable in just a short period of time.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you see it all at the Ryder Cup.
Jimmy, before we go, you mentioned about this year, for the first time, the Ryder Cup will go to Paris. It has truly become a global event, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I could be wrong about this, but I seem to remember some executive, whether it was with the RNA or the BBC, somebody telling me that the Ryder Cup gets better ratings in the UK than the Open Championship does. It's, and I think, look, it's kind of an Olympics in a certain way. It's got that appeal. I think people become so invested in it, the emotions. And, there's a measure of nationalism. And sure. It's just a very unique event. It's really something very, very special. I always say to people, if you're a sports fan, you need to do a few things. You need to go to Wimbledon, you need to go to Augusta National, you need to go to an Olympics, and you need to go to a Ryder Cup.
And with that, we will conclude. Jimmy Roberts, one of the great voices and individuals in our game. Jimmy, thanks again so much. We look forward to your ongoing reporting for Golf Channel and NBC Sports, and certainly at the 2018 Ryder Cup this September outside of Paris. Thanks again, Jimmy.
Kelly, it's good to be with you.
Yes, sir.